I just thought, right? So, in my opinion, right, I think I think Echo Mercy is just broken, right? I think Echo Mercy is legitimately just too, it does too much. And I think that a lot of other people are like, you can go brawl and you can do it, right? And the way I look at it already straight off the bat is I'm fine with trading, right? So if I lose my, my off tank and then my Zen, then I could res one of them and, we can get a kill. If we don't get a res, you trade and it's still like not bad. Okay. So the comp that I think is probably the best right now, and I think this beta is very, very, very interesting. So why I think it's interesting is because it takes a lot of stuff into account. It takes like the map type into account. So what I mean by that is it takes enclosed into account. It takes high grounds into account. It takes long distance as well. High ground. I'm missing it. Oh, and I think also 2 CP is something else that's also very interesting. So these are like the 4 sort of conditions for math type that I think are like, you have to sort of like understand and play around. Okay. Then the other thing that I think is really interesting, right, is you're gonna see sort of like, in my opinion, like 2 sort of compositions. You're gonna see either a hybrid or you're gonna see some type of brawl. Okay. The hybrid will be still around the ball, some off tank. Actually, I'll talk about that in a bit. Tracer. I'll say Echo. Some teams might run Sombra, but again, I think Echo's broken. Mercy, and then I think Zen. I think BAP is actually decent on certain places, and I'll talk about it. I'll even write like Sombra here, but I don't think Sombra's that great. So if you're gonna run this type of variant, and this is like a very like fast variant in my opinion. You can play it slow too, but like there's like a very fast variant. Then I think you're gonna see a brawl variant. And like I think there's different ways to approach this brawl. I'll like write a few of them down and move cam. I will move cam, sorry. Let's see. I think there's a few different ways to look at the brawl. You can go with, Ryan based brawl, and I'll write that over here. You can go with like Winston based brawl, right? And then you'll have, in my opinion, I think Diva is just very strong if you're going this route. And then if you're going brawl, I think you pretty much lean towards Lucio, right? And then depending on like the distance, right? Like if it's like really, really, really far, then you might have a BAP. If it's really, really close, then you're gonna have a Moira. So it's a question is, do you need Lamp or do you not? Moira versus BAP. Then the biggest thing I think then you also have to think about is how, like, what's the difference? Is it control center where like you can just hit that team really hard, or is it like mecha base where it's like longer? In like in a closed map that's still a little bit longer, I think you sort of need a tracer, right? If it's not a tracer, so I'll sort of, I don't have a lot of space here. But if it's not a tracer, right, then like you can start running like more aggressive stuff like Reaper, right? Doomfist. You can maybe go looks bad. Reaper Doom, you could go Sim, like you can sort of go on this whole thing of like what's an aggressive brawl hero, right? And then the same thing applies for this spot too, right? These things sort of share the same, concept, right? You could even go like a double flanker brawl, like you could go Tracer Sombra, right? If it's it's a bit open more map. You just have to understand the distance, right? And like I can draw it out over here. So like if you have a map like Control Center, you're probably going to be looking at more stuff that are like really aggressive, like Reaper, Doom, Sim, Junk, right? You might even honestly maybe run some Echo, right? But if you have a more open map, in my opinion, like Mecha Base, you're going to see more of, maybe you're going to definitely see a Tracer, because the reason why you normally want a Tracer is because some teams might run that ball hybrid variant, and having a Tracer allows you to sort of like deal pressure to the enemy ball tracer, right? Force point and like watch your flanks essentially. So I think Tracer is like really, really important. It's also like sort of a staple. And then you might see some other options. You might see, in my opinion, like McCree is pretty decent. I think you might see and Echo is also an option, but the problem is you don't have a necessary pocket, so you have to like play in the team, which is weird. I think Reaper could work, but the problem with Reaper is you have to get really close on them, and you're already closing distance, which is why I think Korea is like not a bad option, right? But you'll see something sort of like that. Depending on the map, you might also see Mei, right? The Mei, the Mei could go here. The Mei could also technically go here. It depends on a choke. For example, let's say we're looking at like a map like University. Um, on University, you'll probably see something like, if you want to run Brawl, you might see something like Mei McCree, right? So like if there are choke stuff and like that technically gives a little bit more value, right? Choke based, then you're probably gonna like see that like come into more effect than a tracer, right? You sort of have to like weigh your options, like, oh, this map is really choke based, okay, right? If it's choke based, I'll take the Mei sort of over the tracer because I don't need it as much. So you sort of have to, again, like, this is what I sort of talked about, or like what I was trying to explain, like map geometry or map structure is like really, really interesting in this meta, because I think the most optimal comps are getting chosen based off like map type. Okay, so that's sort of like the brawl concepts, right? And like there are teams I know for a fact that are like hard trying to run this comp, like Ryan, Diva, Sombra, or not Ryan, sorry, like Winston, Diva, Sombra, Tracer, like Lucio, Moira. I know some are also try with Brig Zen, right? And like what I'll say to this is like, sure, again, in closed maps I can see it, right? Because you can hit the enemy team so fast before the echo can get value. And the other way of also looking at it, right, is in comp maps. If you're playing a hybrid comp like this, your first fight, like a hybrid comp like this, ball some off tank, Tracer, Echo, Mercy, BAP. Your first fight is like so crucial. Like if you mess up that first fight, retaking is just a nightmare because like the enemy brawl team can just hit you so fast, and it's like very hard for your ball tracer to get that displacement value. So I can see it again in these enclosed maps. But when you start looking at maps that are like more, in my opinion, like longer or more, open and whatnot, I think it's a lot harder for this to get value because, in my opinion, Mercy Echo can just shred Winston. Like absolutely shred it, right? Like even Winston Zarya, absolutely shred it, right? So like and that's the problem that you're getting from Mercy Echo, because you have Mercy Echo plus Discord, tanks just get absolutely blown up. And like I can explain the concept, right? But I want to sort of again try and finish like Koths. So like I said, like in enclosed maps and Koth, you're probably gonna see a lot more brawl, right? It's the more optimal comp. You can still run like a hybrid comp, but if you're gonna play it, you need to win that neutral fight by trying to bait your immobile people. When the enemy teams rushes your immobile people, then you look for your ball tracer to try and like split the enemy team up, and then your Echo Mercy get value, and if you lose someone, you res. Um, so it can work, right? But it's like very neutral based, and if it doesn't work like in that first fight and you don't cap, then it's gonna be really hard for you. So again, now if it's not an enclosed Koth map, right, then you're sort of looking at, in my opinion, a few options, right? What I think is insanely strong is this. This is what I thought of, because everyone was thinking about Sigma, everyone was thinking about Diva, and I legitimately think Zarya is a very, very strong off tank. And the reason why I think Zarya is a very strong off tank is because Zarya can live from Echo. Zarya also has grab. Zarya also has bubble. So Zarya can peel bubble, Zen, right? Zarya can grab an enemy team, and you can grab pulse now. You can grab mines. There's a lot of capability. Zarya also ramps in the mid fight, right? Zarya can bubble ball going in, so ball doesn't get blown up by a Mercy Echo. So you end up getting like a lot of value out of the Zarya at the start of fight just by ramping. And then after your people who hit, the mobile people hit, right? Your Zarya gets like high charge and they can push in the mid fight, which is incredibly strong. So I think it's this. I think this is probably one of the strongest comps right now, right? And I think it can be run on most maps. It struggles again, and it struggles like in enclosed areas. So I'll sort of say where it struggles. Like in my opinion, like enclosed maps, it's a little difficult, right? So enclosed, I think really, really big distances, it'll struggle a little bit. It's still doable. I haven't tested enough, but I think this might be doable. It's just really how well you understand taking space. And if I do swap it, I'll talk about that in a second, like what I think the swaps would be. And I think the other one is sort of like high grounds. And the same thing for high grounds. I think this is also doable. It just like swaps, like small little swaps that'll make your life very easy. Okay. So yeah. Now if we like talk about the like, so let me first go into like this stuff first, okay? So in closed maps we talked about why it's sort of rough, right? Let's talk about like distance maps, okay? Distance maps, the reason why it can be a little rough and tricky is because your team ends up getting a little bit split sometimes, because when you look at this composition, right? You have Ball, Echo, Tracer, who are like very mobile, and you can technically put Mercy in here, sort of, not really though. And then you have like immobile people, Zarya, Zen, right? So obviously, again, these people try and hit together. Again, not cookie cutter. I'll post maybe my Echo video to help explain Echo engages, but like Echo could peel. But what I'm getting at is when these people commit, right? Your Zarya, if they commit really far away, your Zarya Zen is sometimes left in like Narnia. So I think one of the concepts that's actually going to be sort of a macro concept, which is a concept of sort of like hitting an enemy team like once, and then whoops, like hitting an enemy team once, right, with like your mobile people, and then your backline, then like your Zarya Zen like take space, like you like go forward to like a really good position, maybe like a high ground or somewhere where it's like just good, and then you can hit them again. And like this could be like a soft hit, right? But it's just a basic hit so that it allows your backline to get closer to the enemy so your Zarya can get value in those longer maps. Or they can rotate to a position that just gives them, again, more value. Because when your Echo is hitting and going really aggressive, you want your Echo Mercy always to be somewhat relatively close to your Zen so your Mercy can, peel. Sometimes again your Zen's a war casualty and your Zen can die, and that's like fine and all whatnot. But like you have to have this concept of like closing distance, and like that's sort of how I sort of think about approaching it. So that's the distance maps, and the swaps that I think if you wanted to make swaps, right? I think the swaps you would make is something around this, and I'm not too sure on these yet. But like if Zari ends up being like sort of a problem, you could maybe go Diva instead. If you're not getting value out of Echo because of a distance, you could either go Ashe or Hanzo. I don't think Ashe is actually like inherently terrible, right? I think Ashe is actually still pretty decent. I think the problem with Hanzo's not bad, and it's like really good if you can like set up kill boxes and like get the spam off, right? But like Ashe is just consistent pressure, and I think that's really, 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 really strong. Okay. Another option also, right? If there's like verticality, well, again, distance, we'll assume there's no verticality right now, so it's just this, okay? Now, if there's like high ground stuff, right, then to me, it's a lot about, again, rotation, setting up your backline and getting them in position that, is valuable. But I think the immediate swaps you probably think of right off the bat is you think of your Zarya. Your Zarya can't get value, you go Diva, right? And then if your Echo, again, isn't able to get value, I think you go Ashe or Hanzo. But the biggest one that I think is actually really, really good is Zen to BAP. And why I think BAP is actually somewhat decent is because of the fact that BAP doesn't need as much care in these high ground situations, so you need less peels. You can also like move around the map a lot better. Whenever there's high ground, there's always this false sense of security for Zen because you can get booped a lot. Most Zens don't actually like positioning high ground; they prefer playing low grounds, right? So by playing BAP, you have to peel less for your BAP. Your BAP can honestly do more around the map and like position better. So that's sort of the thoughts on BAP there. Okay, so that's sort of like the swaps you would make if there was like distance, high ground, enclosed. Like I said, I don't really think this comp is that great for enclosed, like hyper enclosed maps on Koth. I think you just go something else, like a brawl based comp. Um, I can quickly talk about like why this comp works, or like why I think it's so strong. So why I'm thinking this comp is so strong. And after this, I'll take a whole bunch of questions. So why I think this comp is so strong, and I think it's just like probably one of the best overall comps, is because the fact that you so essentially like you're able to you're able to sort of like brawl, dive, and sort of peel and poke. Like there's so many different ways to play this comp, and so many different ways to like work around this that like it makes it very hard to deal with, right? If you look at standard brawl comps, right, like your Mercy Echo can just get value. And most people are gonna say like, oh, you have a Mercy Echo, can a hit scan like hit the Echo? And like, sure, right? Like the hit scan can, right? But at a really high level, if you're really coordinated, what ends up happening is a ball will just hit the enemy hit scan, and then as soon as that happens, right, um, all of a sudden when the ball hits the hit scan, the enemy team has a tracer, an echo, was damage boosted by a mercy, and maybe even discorded, right? Like, it becomes really hard for, and that hit scan like just dies instantly. So you end up just getting blown up like really, 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 really hard, right? So that's sort of how to like think like, oh, you think hit scans will counter this? Well, the answer is not really. Not if your like hits are really good. And then now if you think, okay, well, if hits against counter this, can we go for like a really hard aggressive dive, right? And like sure, right? Like people think sure, you can go for like a hard aggressive dive, like something that like a 6-man dive, and like the answer is okay, you go for a hard aggressive dive, you're probably gonna look to try and kill the Zarya Zen, right? And like in a perfect world, I can see that, right? Obviously, the Zen can maybe later swap to something like Ana to maybe have a little better survivability, right? But and like Zarya can maybe go Diva again for better survivability. But the fact of the matter is, if the enemy team dives, right, and I'll sort of draw it out like in a very basic sense. Like one team is here, your or sort of like a middle playing field here, and your let's say your Mercy, your Echo, Mercy's like over here, right? Mercy. Make sure I can see everything. This is just like the enemy dive. And then let's say your back line is sort of, your Zarya then is over here. And let's say that like my ball tracer, again, I should have different colors. It's my bad. So move this up. Ball. The ball plus tracers here, right? What'll end up happening is the enemy team will full commit to this, right? And then as soon as this happens, these guys are gonna like bolt. Like, let me try and get a good color. These guys will try and back up, right? When, in my opinion, so this would be, let's do a different color. This is enemy team. When they do one, when they engage with one, right? The backline will also be one and they'll back up. When these guys engage in close distance, right? As long as there is this distance factor between these two teams, that's like, I'll just say like, again, in engineer enemy says N, right? Which is like very large, right? Like the distance is very large. It'll allow enough time for your ball essentially to go in and displace the enemy team, right? Which when you're displacing, right, that first of all makes it harder for them to engage, but it also forces a bunch of CDs. So if you think of like the CDs I'm talking about, well, if they're playing like Winston, Diva, Tracer, Sombra, I don't know, like, Lucio, Moira, right? You're gonna force like Fade here for sure. You might that's the biggest one. They're running Reaper, right? You're gonna force Wraith, right? So if they have like these type of CDs type of things, then like you're gonna force these CDs, which is like super, super, super valuable, right? Why? Because when these guys are also pushing, right? Like I put this as like a 1.5. Your ball tracer is going to do that. Your Echo Mercy is also going to hit them at the same time, right? Which is also 1.5 and disrupt the, like, so ball tracer disrupts the engage. The Echo Mercy also hits their engage and does a lot of damage. And you hope to essentially get them very, very, very low to the point where they're like, they can't do much by the time they're on the Zarya's end. If you kill them, that's great. If you even don't kill them, then what ends up happening is they might kill your Zarya Zen, but then you leave your Zarya Zen in like an open space. Like I'm running out of colors here. But you leave them in sort of like an open area. Yellow. So you want to put these guys in like an open area in which your ball tracer can come back and your echo can also farm. So like if they do manage to kill your Zarya or Zen, the enemy team has no environment, they've used all their CDs, right? Then you just kill them there and you're in a really good place, right? Because then later they're an open place. Your Echo Mercy can farm them. You can get a res back. Your ball tracers can cycle again and hit them again, and you end up coming out on top. And if you think about this even more logically, if you position your Zarya's Zen smart, like high grounds or in positions that like they have to like rotate through a lot of stuff or environment to get, then it becomes really, really, really hard to actually hit them. Okay. So now, so that's dive, right? And like if it was brawl, it'd be pretty much the same exact concept because both these like things are sort of looking to try and hit the enemy team as fast as possible. Okay, so this is sort of like, in my opinion, sort of why this comp is super strong. Um, and yeah, like I think it's incredibly strong. I think the other reason why it's also just absolutely broken is Zen, right? Like even if your Zen dies, right, the value you're giving to your DPS, right, with like Discords and Harmony Orbs is incredibly strong. The other value, you're also getting from Ball Tracer being able to constantly slam the enemy team's backline is just insane. There are some teams that are trying to like on longer maps run stuff like Ball Diva, or Ball Sigma, Mercy Echo, Hanzo, and like go for more of like a hybrid spam alternative. But the problem I have with that is that, in my opinion, Ball Tracer just creates space so well and like creates such good split focus and disruption where they can get instant kills. It's like really, 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 really hard.